on the list, look out for Commissioner Glass. We do have our quorum. So with that, the time is 7:03. I'll call our meeting of the Public Works Commission, City of Redondo Beach to order. And if we could start off with a roll call, please.
I'm going to actually apologize and ask that you let me chime in just for a moment so I can swear in the new commissioner.
Yes, of course. Of course.
Thank you. And then you can call roll to include her. Commissioner Arata, if you would raise your right hand and repeat after me, please. By the way, my name is Vicki Kronberger. I'm Chief Deputy City Clerk, and I'm filling in for City Clerk Eleanor Manzano this evening.
Hello, pleasure to meet you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if you repeat after me, please. Oops, I'm going to shut that off. Okay, all right. Repeat after me, please. I state your name.
I, Cindy Arata,
Do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear and affirm
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservations
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you.
The oath of office certificate will be sent to you, and we'll have you sign one and we'll have you keep one for your records and return one to us for our records. So
Thank you.
thank you very much. And Chair Funabashi, if you would like to proceed with your roll call, we're good to go.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Gene, shall you call the
Sure, I can do that. So,
commissioners? If you would, please.
in order of how the commissioners are appearing on my screen, we have Commissioner Arata,
Present.
Commissioner Bajaj,
Present.
Commissioner Min.
I'm here.
We have Vice Chair Simpson,
I'm here.
Chair Funabashi,
Here.
and then as of right now, we have Commissioner Glass is absent.
Okay, and hopefully he'll be joining us shortly. Cindy, would you do us the honor at this part of the meeting when we salute the flag? If you'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, that would be great.
Sure. I'm just standing up. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
to the flag
of the
United States of
America and to the republic
for which it
stands,
one nation,
one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
with
with liberty
and
and justice for all. Great, thank you. I presume everyone's had a chance to take a look at this evening's agenda, and with that, unless there's any request that we make any changes, I'll look for a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll make that motion.
We have a first from Vice Chair Simpson. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second, Commissioner Bajaj. Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Or raising hand. Any opposed, say nay. Okay, seeing none then, and for the rest of the meeting, I may go for an actual roll call type vote for the actual topics.
Chair Funabashi. Sorry, we need to interrupt you for a second.
Yes.
Yeah, I did need to ask for an item J2 to be pulled from tonight's agenda. We have some additional work to do with the proponents on the tree ordinance, and they've asked that we postpone this for another meeting.
Okay, so we're simply omitting the discussion J2 on the tree ordinance.
Correct. We'll be bringing that at a future date for you.
Okay, but all other items remain the same, I presume.
Do we
Yes.
need a motion to do that, or?
Yeah, let's go ahead and I'll resubmit, the request for a motion to approve the agenda with that one omission or deletion, I should say.
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
I'll
And a
second it.
Okay. And similarly, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Raise your hand. Are there any opposed? Say nay. Okay, so we have our agenda for this evening. Thank you. I also noticed there were no blue folder items when I clicked on that link about a half an hour ago. Is that still accurate? No blue folder items for this evening?
Yes, that's accurate. I haven't received any blue folder items.
Okay, very good. That brings us to section F, the consent calendar. I'll read this quickly and then mention F1 and F2, and I'll circle back for one motion approval for the consent calendar. These are business items except those formally notice for public hearing or discussion. These are assigned to the consent calendar. The commission members may request that any consent calendar items be removed, discussed, and acted upon separately. Items removed from the consent calendar will be taken up under the excluded consent calendar section below. Those items remaining on the consent calendar will be approved in one motion following oral communications. We have our proof of posting, which was noted in the package, as well as the minutes from our last meeting. I see no excluded consent calendar items. So the one question I have to our commission is, for those of you that were present at last meeting, do we have any amendments or corrections to last meeting minutes? Okay, so I'm seeing none. And no separate oral communication. So with that, I'll seek a motion from the commission to approve the consent calendar.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Arata. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, and is that Commissioner Min who seconded?
It was Bajaj.
Okay. Bajaj. Okay, just for the record. Thank you. And okay, so then all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Or raise your hand. And do we have any opposed? All right, seeing none, then our consent calendar passes. And I see Commissioner Glass has joined us. Good evening. Glad you're with us. Okay, no other.
He's here, but he seems to have Andy's name under his picture. I don't know why.
Andy sent me a way to get in because I had the wrong meeting number on for some reason. So I've used what Andy sent me to sign in.
All right.
So I won't be held responsible for any of his votes, okay?
Very good. Very good. Okay. There are no items continued from previous agendas, but we'll jump right into the meat of our meeting, section J, items for discussion. Prior to action, our very first one this time of the year when we select and elect a new chairperson to lead our commission meetings for the year coming up. And I'll hand it over to staff. I see Jean has a presentation for us.
Hey, Jean, before you start, did we ask for public participation on non-agenda items, Mr. Chair?
You know what? I did not ask that. Forgive me. And I know that we do need to do that before we jump in. So if we could pause that for just a moment, and I will ask of city staff if we have anyone in the public realm who would like to speak on any items that are not on the agenda this evening.
No, we do not.
Okay. Thank you, Ted, for reminding me of that. And seeing that, then we will now go back into our selection of a chairperson and vice chairperson for our commission.
Good evening. Yes.
You have the floor.
Okay. Good evening, commissioners, and welcome, Commissioner Arata, to our Public Works Commission. So as we've done in previous years, I don't really have a presentation. It's just a brief blurb about, every year, typically in September, we didn't have a September meeting. So now in October for this year, we kind of go through selecting a Public Works Commission chairperson and vice chairperson. And so typically the chairperson's task will be to generally run the meeting, to kind of run the roll call votes as appropriate, to, also to cast a vote, but of course to also, if there's instances of requiring additional order or, for progression of meeting and things of that nature, the chairperson is actually kind of in charge, if you will, of running the Public Works Commission meeting on the commission side. And so the vice chairperson, of course, similar role in the event that the chairperson is not present. And so how this typically works is I believe it's nomination based, and then the individual who's nominated has the option to either accept or decline the nomination, and then it goes to a vote for selecting both the chairperson and the vice chairperson. And so I guess with that, we kind of leave it open to the commission to determine which chairperson and even the vice chairperson you guys would like to nominate.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, I see your hand up, Vice Chairman Simpson.
Yes, I would like to nominate Commissioner Funabashi as chairman. I think he's done an excellent job, and I'd like to see him continue.
Can I ask a question? Is this this is an annual thing? They renew every year?
Yes.
And do you know, like historically in the last 3 years, who has been the chair?
I believe for our commission, it had been, I don't know about 3 years. I can't recall it that far back, but at least the last couple years, and please.
I believe 2.
Yeah, it's been Chair Funabashi and Vice Chair Simpson.
Right.
Yes, and that I know it's been at least the last 2 years, and it's so interesting, John, that that you would seek to, obviously nominate me again, and I'm certainly flattered. You kind of beat me to it, though. I was really looking forward to you as our vice chairman of nominating you to be chairman this year, as I think it's only befitting the role that you've held as our vice chairman, and you certainly know how this all works and everything, and that we would, through natural progression, pull someone up within our commission who's been with us now for at least a year or two into the vice chair person, position. And although again, I'm very humbled and encouraged and to have that nomination. And I don't know, it's not something that I would necessarily decline per se, but I would ask the rest of the commission if they might consider another nomination that would include someone else, just to give someone else a shot at it. And I also see, obviously, go ahead.
I was going to nominate Commissioner Simpson for the chair if he's accepting it. He's been here he's longer than I have and been part of the vice chair since I've been part of the commission. I think it would be great to see him do that.
Well, why don't I just go ahead and second? I would second that, and I will second that, and you can have you have the floor for comments.
I'm honored to be nominated, and if elected, I will serve, I guess.
One more question. So, how are Commissioner Simpson? Are you on your first term?
I have to clarify this. I was appointed to a partial term that I filled out for a year or so, and then this is my first full term.
Okay.
And I guess this term would end in a year, and I think I'm entitled to apply again because I was filling out a partial term. I'm not quite sure how that works out, and I certainly, if I am eligible to go for another full term, I intend to do that. But I have to clarify that with the city clerk whether I think it was only filled a year for a partial term, a year and a half. So I mean, we're limited to 2 terms. I think I'm able to have 2 full terms and then that little bit that I filled out. But as I say, I have to get that clarified.
Right. And then Commissioner Chair Funabashi as well. Is this your first term or second term?
This is actually the 15, 16. I have a similar story where I did a partial term that did not count as the initial term. And I believe I am now just starting my second term.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I believe that's right. You're starting your second, and I'm finishing this term and would start a next term in a year, as I understand it, if I'm eligible for it.
Got it. For the record, I think Chair Funabashi, you've done a great job, and I have full confidence that Commissioner Simpson would do a great job. So I guess this is a good position for us to be in.
I'm going to go
Absolutely.
ahead. Can I make a vote? I'm going to go ahead and second Commissioner Simpson's vote for Commissioner Funabashi for chair, and I'm going to second Commissioner. Oh no, and also make a vote for Commissioner Simpson, which would be, I don't know if it was somebody's second for vice.
Well, we actually have a motion on the table that's been seconded, and that is John as for chairman. I believe we already have a first and a second on that. So we would need to either, continue the discussion, or I can call the vote for that as chair, and then we would move on to the vice chairperson position.
So for you to continue is off the table?
It is currently, because that motion was not seconded.
Well, I think, Mr. Chair, you have the ability to have substitute motions, if that's
of course.
the direction of the commission.
Well, and I'm okay. So,
what's the process here? So someone needs to make a motion now to. So was Commissioner Arata's a motion or not really, because it was combined with both chair and vice chair nominations?
That is correct, but I guess I can make a motion for Chair Funabashi to remain chair, and for Commissioner Simpson to remain vice chair.
I would second that motion.
For clarification, Chairperson Funabashi,
yes.
So long as Commissioner Arata is making that as a substitute motion, then you would be taking action on the substitute motion first, and then you go back to the original motion if that fails.
Yes. Okay. Well, then, unless there's any other discussion.
May I speak?
On that substitute? Yes. Is that Commissioner Glass?
I would like to say that I'm the longest serving member of the commission at this time. And I think you two have done a wonderful job, but you've been in position for 2 years. I think it'd be appropriate to move John up. This is my opinion, and move somebody in as, let's say, an understudy vice chair.
Okay, and obviously that is part of our discussion. We do have a substitute motion, and if I understand Ted's explanation of our rules, that we need to take at least a vote on that substitute motion, and depending on the outcome of that, we might in fact revert back to the initial of just as you stated, having Vice Chair Simpson step up. One point of clarification, though, is this: I was under the impression that the voting process here would be individual, that we voted first on the chairperson and then the vice chair, although does it matter one way or the other? And I guess I'm asking that of staff.
In the past, we have voted for them individually.
That's what I thought.
Correct. And Mr. Chair, I believe you can do that individually, because a lot of times it's indeterminate in terms of who may become the chair, and then you decide who will be the vice chair. But if the single motion does it for both and the commission supports it, it may also be approved in that same manner.
Okay. Yeah. So it's really, I think the formality is it can be done either way. And yet one might be personally preferred one way or the other, but obviously either one is acceptable. So Again, I tend to agree with you, Commissioner Glass. Obviously, I really enjoy being on the Public Works Commission, and yet I will share all with you. I think it's appropriate that I currently step down from the position as chair to still actively participate, but as you've stated, to give other members the opportunity to step up. And I think it's been stated that Vice Chair Simpson, is certainly ready, willing, and able to assume that position. And so I guess I still need to call the vote on the motion that is on the table right now. But that's just me expressing what, my thoughts and opinions. So
Would you restate the motion?
with that, currently, as I understand it, Commissioner Arata's motion is that I remain as the chairperson, and that Commissioner Simpson remains as the vice chair of the commission.
Chair Funabashi, just real quick. So the clarification here is, if we are moving with the substitute motion, it's implied that both you and Vice Chair Simpson are accepting the nominations, correct? Because
Yes.
if you guys decline the nomination, if we would need to move forward with the motion.
Right. And that makes even more sense. And so, yes, then I will humbly decline to that nomination.
So then in that case, can we do another substitute motion?
You sure can.
Okay, so then I make a motion to have Commissioner Simpson step up to be the chair, and I'll leave it there.
I think that's the original motion.
Yeah, you don't need a second.
Okay.
That is the original motion.
Yeah, that's the original motion.
It was already seconded, so you don't need one, right?
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, is there any other discussion? Okay, then I'll call this first vote to elect the chairperson, Commissioner Simpson, to become the role of chairperson. And I'll ask Jean if you'll just do an oral vote, a call for each of us.
All right. Commissioner Min,
Aye, yes.
Commissioner Arata,
Aye.
Commissioner Bajaj,
Yes.
Commissioner Glass,
Yes.
Vice Chair for now, Simpson.
Well, I guess I might as well vote yes. I could have abstained, but I'll vote yes.
And Chair Funabashi.
That's a big yes. Okay. So, but now's the interesting part too. The other curveball is, now that he's elected, do we pass the meeting on to him, or do I finish up with this one part of the meeting?
I think it's supposed to be passed on to him because the motion
I think so.
has designated him as a chair. And so now Chair Simpson will now move forward with the process of nomination of a vice chairperson.
Well, I hope someone will make a nomination for vice chair.
I will
I
make
will
a
nominate
motion.
Commissioner.
I was going to make a motion to nominate Commissioner Min for vice chair.
And Commissioner Funabashi will second that motion.
Okay, are there any amendments to that motion or any substitute motions? Seeing none.
Does Commissioner Min accept the nomination?
Yeah, that's the big question on the table, right?
Very good point.
It's for 1 year, right? A 1 year period. So if it's for a 1 year period, I'll accept the nomination.
Okay, so that being the case, I'll call the question on the motion. Guys, roll call vote, I guess.
All righty. Commissioner Min?
I guess yes.
Commissioner Funabashi?
Yes.
Commissioner Arata?
Aye.
Commissioner Bajaj,
Aye.
Commissioner Glass,
Yes.
and Chair Simpson.
Absolutely, yes.
All right. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Yes, congratulations. Well done.
And if we can just
And-
add something, I just want to again commend former Chair Funabashi for the excellent job he's done for the last couple of years. He's led the commission very, very well, and I greatly appreciate that and hope I can follow in his footsteps successfully.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'm sure you will.
Thank you, Commissioner Funabashi. You've done a great job.
Thank you.
So next on the agenda then, Gene, I don't have it in front of me. I guess it's, is it the speed issues on Blossom? That's what I thought.
All right. So on the screen or on, I think the staff computer is listed as J3 because J2 has been pushed back, postponed to the next meeting. So item J3, or the third item, tonight's agenda is the Blossom Lane between Ripley Avenue and 190th Street traffic enhancements. So I'm just going to kind of briefly go over a little bit of the background, some of the analysis efforts that we have, briefly talk about some of the existing geometry, roadway conditions, some of the concerns that were brought up, and then staff's recommendations. And so, it just on a continuing ongoing effort to address resident concerns regarding vehicle speeds, traffic volumes, we took a look at this segment of Blossom Lane that's between Ripley Avenue and 190th Street to address some of the concerns that residents had and to kind of proactively look and determine some alternatives, if you will, to enhance safety along this corridor. So in the current condition, the Blossom Lane is actually, in the next slide, I'll kind of have a better aerial, if you will, but in its current condition, the roadway segment of Blossom Lane, classified as a local residential. To the north side, we have Ripley Avenue. To the south side, we have 190th Street. The thing to note is the intersection of Blossom Street at 190th Street. On the north side, within the city of Redondo Beach, is Blossom Lane. And on the south side is actually within the city of Torrance, as you can see by the red demarcation, if you will, on this aerial image. That's within the city of Torrance and is classified as Burrell Street. The general concerns regarding this roadway kind of stem from the installation of the traffic signal control back in, I believe, in 2016 at the intersection of Blossom Lane, Burrell Street at 190th Street. So previously, the intersection was a two-way stop controlled intersection. The two-way stops were along the north and southbound directions. And the traffic signal was actually installed to basically to kind of enhance traffic safety and overall traffic flow along the corridor, especially in the northbound and southbound direction, because a warrant study was done that identified the need to address some of the increased number of collisions that were occurring there, and then the deficient northbound traffic flow for vehicles that were trying to enter onto 190th Street from Barrow Street. And so as part of our assessment, we did field observation, data collections, and then data assessment. As mentioned previously, Blossom Lane, classified as a local residential street. It runs north-south. There's an unposted prima facie speed limit of 25 miles an hour. It's approximately 36 feet wide. There's one travel lane in each direction, one northbound lane, one southbound lane. Parallel parking is allowed on both sides of the roadway. Now, along this roadway segment, we have Blossom Court, which is kind of a cul-de-sac roadway, a few residential homes around there. And then to the north of Blossom Court, between Ripley and Blossom Court, is Havemeyer, another residential street. And this residential street actually goes easterly and connects Blossom Lane to Ridge Lane, that's located to the east. To the north, we have the roadway of Ripley Avenue, and to the south, we have 190th Street, as mentioned previously. That intersection is shared with the city of Redondo Beach and the city of Torrance. Along the roadway segment of Blossom Lane, there's a gentle downward vertical grade when you're traveling from Ripley onto 190th Street. And fronting development is generally a residential. We have Perry Allison Park to the south. On the west side and to the east side of that, we have the Southern California Edison substation. So the next two slides are just going to show what the intersection looked like prior to the installation of the traffic signal. So to the left of here, we have the westbound approach. So if you're traveling westbound, to the left, we have an image showing what it looked like when it was under its unsignalized condition. And then to the right, we have westbound approach signalized. And so it's kind of generally just to show the, prior to the installation of the signal and then following the installation of the signal. And the eastbound, similarly, you can see, no traffic signal post here, no signal arm, no post here. And then here we have the installation of the traffic signal controls at this intersection. Okay, so when we're looking at the analysis, so the concerns for the increased traffic volumes and speeds were initially brought to our attention following the installation of the traffic signal controls at the intersection. So the signal was installed as part of the Barrel Street Storm Drain and Roadway Rehab project. And as part of that project, it was originally a storm drain related project. However, there was a warrant analysis that was done previously. And so city staff kind of took an opportunity to kind of look in modifying the north and south two-way stop control intersection to a fully signalized intersection as the traffic signal warrant concluded that there may be some additional safety and vehicular traffic flow issues that needed to be addressed. And so we kind of lumped those two projects together and incorporated the signal installation as part of that roadway rehab project. Now, typically, standard practice, when we assess roadways for speeds, volumes, collisions, anything of that nature, we kind of wait approximately 6 months for traffic to normalize before we kind of go out and get any assessments, because we like to kind of see how traffic adjusts to a major construction change, such as a traffic signal. So in a nutshell, the signal was installed back in 2016. In the time that it took for us to wait to start the assessment, there was a Southern California gas project that came in, and then that project had construction and scheduling delays. And so that project took longer than we anticipated. And then we had to wait an additional 6 months or so because there were huge traffic impacts associated with the Southern California gas project. And so in that time that it took us to wait and then try to reinitiate the project, that's when we kind of encroached into the COVID-19 restrictions, where volumes were significantly lower than what they were in previous times. And so, there's a lot of factors and extenuating circumstances, if you will, that kind of limited our ability to really look at an assessment until recently, if you will. So as part of our recent assessment, we looked at traffic volume data at the intersection of Blossom and Burl at 190th. We looked at speed data along Blossom Lane. And then, of course, we looked at collision history along the corridor and at the intersection itself. And I'll kind of be going over each one individually. So when we're looking at the volume data, the full tables for the volume assessment are provided within the AR. But the key item to note for the traffic volume analysis is that we had 2013 volumes that were taken previously as part of the signal warrant study that was done. And so what we ended up doing was we ended up looking at those volumes and then looking at recent 2021 volumes that we took earlier this year and kind of compare them and realize that the comparison showed, and the table shows, when I didn't put the table here because there was a lot of different numbers, but the table showed that it was kind of a drastic difference between the old 2013 volume and the current 2021 volumes, especially considering the fact that a lot has happened. Roadway, the 2021 volumes, I mean, we've already had potential COVID-related changes, but also at the same time, there's one item that we always have to look for when we're comparing volumes that are too old, and that's the fact that there's overall population growth and access changes that occur. And so the 2013 volumes, although we had those volumes, and it gives us a somewhat pretty good baseline to start with, it didn't really paint the whole picture for us. And so what we ended up doing was we took those standard 2013 volumes that we had taken previously, and then we applied an adjustment factor, and then we compared that new adjustment factor volumes to the recent counts that were taken earlier this year. And so these quote unquote normalized 2021 volumes, which are, like I said, the 2013 volumes with the factor adjustment, are basically intended to account for changes in traffic volumes that are either due to pandemic influences growth or just potential changes in driving patterns. And so how we did that was we identified an overall intersection volume change. And so instead of looking at individual movements, we looked at overall an intersection. How did that intersection change? So we identified an overall change between 2021 and 2013. And then we applied that change to the older 2013 volumes, essentially kind of bumping that volume up to what it would look like if we had gotten those older volumes compared to the current volumes of 2021. And so essentially, we found a way to kind of modify them to account for those growth changes that occurred between 2013 to 2021 to kind of look at a more apples to apples type comparison. So if you look at the table and what we had identified was the 2013 volumes showed huge drastic changes in how the volumes were. But when we looked at the 2021 normalized versus the 2021 volumes, there were changes, but they were less drastic, if you will, in whether it be the plus or the minus side of the volumes when compared to the current 2021. So our volume data found that generally the overall traffic volumes did increase on Blossom Lane as a result of the traffic signal installation. For northbound Blossom, the volume increases were generally minimal in the morning. So it was about a 1 vehicle reduction in the northbound direction. And then in the PM, it was an increase of 44 vehicles. And then the southbound direction of Blossom Lane, it was an increase in both AM and PM peak hours, 21 volumes in the AM peak, and then 29 volumes in, 29 vehicles, I'm sorry, in the PM peak, and then PM peak hour counts. Speeds, the speeds, we didn't have any previous speed data, so we weren't able to compare, but what we were able to find out when we did our speed data is that the average speed was almost 30 miles an hour, but more importantly, the 85th percentile speed was at 34 miles an hour. And then the collision data that we found, there were no collisions, at least no reported collisions along Blossom Lane between Ripley Avenue and 190th Street. And there were 2 collisions that occurred at the intersection of Blossom Lane, Barrow Street at 190th Street. So generally speaking, the volume increase at the intersection is somewhat expected, especially when a traffic signal gets installed, because overall, the traffic signal volume increases. Now, I only looked at Blossom Lane, but it did change the overall driving pattern at the intersection in and of itself. So if you can take a look at the table will show that, there were slight increases in certain directions and there were slight decreases in other directions. And so it's kind of showing that driving patterns as a traffic signal usually would kind of perpetuate or move forward, if you will, is the fact that driving patterns will change. The drivers, because a signal is there, they're modifying their driving behavior to for more accessibility at the intersection or finding ways to utilize the traffic signal control there for more consistent, easier, more accessible operational flow throughout this general area. So it is somewhat expected. Now, speeds, on the other hand, we like I said, we found that there was a bit of elevated speeds along the roadway as they did experience, higher speeds as a result of what may have been the traffic signal control. Staff's recommendation in looking at that was, I think one of the main concerns was the sheer fact that despite the fact that it is classified as a local residential roadway, there's no indications for speed limits along that roadway. So, prima facie is classifying this roadway to be 25 miles an hour. However, the entire segment is unposted. So there's no speed limit that's posted along the roadway to remind drivers of what the speed limit is going to be. So, staff's recommendation is that because it does not have a 25 mile per hour posting is to, of course, install 25 mile per hour speed limit signs at basically the entrance to the roadway segment. And then along the segment is also to install the 25 pavement markings in the ground so that drivers can be reminded of what the speed limit is along this segment of roadway. So coordination wise, I forwarded the meeting notification to District 3 Council Member Horvath for distribution of the meeting notification to his constituents. It was a little bit of a late notice. I think I sent it maybe a week and a half ago or so. Received any correspondence, or I haven't received any blue folder items specific to this segment of Roadway, if you will. But I haven't checked the e-comments, which we may have some, but I haven't checked yet. So the recommendation ultimately to the Public Works Commission for your consideration tonight is to review the engineering report, receive public input, provide direction to staff regarding proceeding with the roadway modification on Blossom Lane between Ripley Avenue and 190th Street. Just once again, real quick, as a reminder, the recommendation is to install the speed limit signs and the pavement markings to address the speed concerns. And then the volume concerns, on the other hand, it's kind of stated in the report, and I've repeated it before, but it is an ancillary effect on Blossom Lane as a whole, as it is, the signal is intended to provide more of an access and flow through the area. So volumes will increase. The largest increase was a 44 vehicle increase in the AM on the PM peak hour in the northbound direction. And so that's kind of for the commission's consideration prior to moving with the recommendation. That concludes my presentation. I'm here if you have any questions.
Thank you very much, Gene, for the presentation. Any questions, fellow commissioners? Commissioner Funabashi.
Thank you, Chair Simpson. In preparation to the meeting, reading this, and I'll share with all of you, I frequent this intersection quite often, and I just have to decide when I'm coming westbound on 190th if I'm going to make a left on Beryl or continue on up the hill. So remember the before and after, and it's a market improvement with this signal and the dedicated left turn onto Beryl. The traffic counts don't surprise me at all. In fact, if you lived north of 190th up Blossom, and you were trying to get and go 190th east in the morning, you would never try to pull out onto 190th. The volume of that flow and needs and not controlled in any. There are significant numbers of cars, our neighbors that are able to take advantage of that green light to make that left turn from south to go east on 190th. I would venture to say, although not part of the report, I'm of the mindset that I'll bet that the light at Ringe southbound to 190th has been alleviated a bit because everyone would have gone over to there prior to this signal. So maybe these two signals are a little more balanced out. I also know there's a bit of an incline there. So if somebody's coming down Blossom and the light's green, they're probably speeding up a little bit to try to make it because there's just more cars on there. At this point, just a friendly reminder of the painted 25 is really ideal. I think that's a step in the right direction. I don't think we need to do anything too wild and crazy. But again, these numbers, the increased speed, we know cars are even much better now in the last 6 years. So that 85th percentile doesn't surprise me at all either. And again, I think the volumes just go in line with a well-designed intersection. And that I think is probably performing much better than it did prior to the signals. So, sense worth. I kind of support what staff is proposing.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Glass.
Yes, Andrew Glass, I guess today. Anyway, I have two questions for you, and that is the two accidents that took place on 190th and Blossom. Did those predate the installation of the traffic light?
No, that was after.
It was after, okay. And the second question is, I don't drive Blossom that much. I drive Ringe. And I was wondering, do we have the same situation on Ringe? Because it seems like cars move very fast down Ringe between Ripley and 190th.
Same condition as in increased volumes and
volumes and speeds. Or have you not looked? My concern, let me just put it this way. My concern is that if we do put these markings on Blossom, then mayhaps we ought to put the same markings on Ringe. Just observation, that's all.
Thank you, Commissioner Glass. Commissioner Min?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was going to kind of echo some of the comments that Commissioner Funabashi mentioned. I mean, it just changed the pattern of people who would live in the neighborhood, right, to have the signal there. So there must be other intersections that are having reduced volumes potentially, like Ringe, as he mentioned. But, you know, one of the things that there really is people using Blossom as cut through now that there's a signal there. I just feel like a sign in paint isn't really going to do the job to keep them slow. I mean, at the very least, I would want to consider a feedback speed, speed sign. I don't know if you guys are using radar speed feedback signs, but I know we've seen that on other projects. I think that would probably have a bigger impact than just a static sign showing the prima facie speed limit. And of course, I mean, it is up to the neighborhood, but if they want speed humps, I mean, that's a kind of a touchy subject, but that would probably stop a lot of people from coming through. But then, that's has other impacts, right, for the community and that people in that street. And they would have to do it. I would assume that you have some kind of process for a community survey to install those kinds of things. But at the very least, I would suggest at least speed feedback signs active so that people, when I see them and it tells me that I'm going a little fast, I slow down because sometimes I just don't realize that the street is wide enough that it makes me feel like I can go a little faster than I should. Echoing Commissioner Glass's comments, same thing on Ringe. I mean, Ringe is even wider and even faster than Blossom, and I'm sure there's similar issues there. So my recommendation would be to at least put in speed feedback signs in addition to the markings.
Thank you, Commissioner Min. Yes, Commissioner Bajaj.
Yeah, thank you. I see everyone's point. I think contrary, to Commissioner Min's experience. So like I live in this particular neighborhood off of Flagler, and if I'm coming down Ripley, let's say westbound, I will often then make the right turn onto Spreckles to get to Flagler. And as soon as it's kind of a very wide sweeping, easy to make that turn at a high speed intersection. And there's a speed limit sign and a pavement marking right on the ground. And I find that it's very noticeable. And similarly to how Commissioner Min said that, a speed feedback sign, really reminds him to just kind of take it down a notch. I do feel that the static sign and the pavement marking does that for me as well. I think perhaps, before going to a higher capital cost installation like a speed feedback sign, I think a good starting point is a sign and a pavement marking. But, I just, like I said, I noticed that there's definitely a positive impact as well to just the paint and sign, right at the entryway of the block.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other comments?
Just curious what the cost is for this. Not sure if it was in the report.
It was in the report, but I can look it up for you.
I know for like the speed feedback signs like LA uses, they range somewhere like $10,000 to $13,000 per speed feedback sign.
Now, two questions, if I may. When you did some traffic calming on Ford Avenue, part of that not only was putting down markers, but I'm not quite sure how wide Blossom is, but there were stripes painted that sort of made the road feel a little bit narrower. And I thought that had an effective impact on speed. Is that something that would work here, and is that worth doing? And would that be, less costly than feedback, but the feedback signs, but still give a little stronger emphasis on the notion that you need to go slower?
Yeah, that is something that can be applied. If as a suggestion, as a friendly suggestion, if you will, if the commission so chooses, what we can do is, we can always reevaluate following an alternative and then see if we want to move forward with additional alternatives. Of course, the issue with that is that we run into sometimes why are we evaluating again? Things are quote unquote taking longer than they should when we're going through the proper channels for assessment. But that is also something that we can do, is possibly either do the signs and the pavement markings and assess, or the commission can decide signs, pavement markings, and edge line striping, and then assess and then see the need for radar feedback signs. There's kind of, there's many ways that we can work with this. But yes, I guess a long answer to a quick and easy question is yes, the edge line striping can be applied here to encourage speed reduction.
Let me see. Commissioner Min, are you still have your hand up? Did you want to say something, or is that? No. Okay. So Commissioner Glass then.
Okay. Yeah. Gene, just following up on what you said, do we have in Redondo Beach any of the temporary radar speed signs that could be put up during some short period?
Okay.
Yes, we do. We coordinate that with PD, and I can request PD to add this location as part of their schedule and their rounds.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Commissioner Bajaj.
Hey, I have a comment now that, Commissioner Glass brought up the idea of one of those speed feedback trailers. And this is just completely just as an aside, just a comment or something that I found interesting recently. I can't recall which city it is, but it's a fairly sizable city. Because there's a theory that, speed feedback signs lose their effectiveness over time. Right, as the drivers in certain neighborhoods or areas, they disregard their signs. But there's a city, and I'll if I can recall, I'll get it to you, that actually has a program where they relocate their speed feedback signs every 2 years. They've got an arsenal of a couple of hundred signs, and every 2 years they swap locations. And I thought that was quite an interesting tactic. Obviously. It would require the resources and the establishment of such a program. But I thought that was an interesting strategy. Just, like I said, just an interesting point to share with the commission.
If I can just chime in here, if it's all right with the fellow commissioners, I believe we have a mixed sort of way of doing this in Redondo Beach. We have some permanent signs that do feedback. And then as I understood it from Gene, and I know I see one of these regularly on Artesia Avenue, there are the trailers that do show up from time to time and get rotated. And
Right.
I guess those are done by the police. Is that correct?
Right.
Yes, that is correct. And to answer Commissioner Bajaj, we actually have several locations in mind, if we haven't installed already, that are ready for rotation. So we actually have that.
Oh, cool.
Rotating the radar feedback.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I think that's more effective when they come in and they're there and they come away and then go someplace else. That's, in my opinion, very effective. Do we have other? Yes, Commissioner Funabashi.
Thank you. I wasn't quite sure if there was any more discussion, but I was going to go ahead after the comment was made that we could put a temporary speed reading sign there through PD. I'm going to go ahead and make a motion for this item that we go ahead with staff's recommendation to add 2 speed limit signs and 2 speed limit pavement markings, and to request of PD that a sign, speed limit sign be positioned there on a temporary basis. I would leave it up to staff to direct PD as to if it will be the northbound or the southbound. I didn't presume that it was in both directions, but that they speed check signal portable one be stationed there as well. That's my motion.
I'll second that motion.
Any amendments or any thoughts? May I offer a friendly amendment? Could we add the edge line striping?
I'd certainly allow that, yes.
That being the case, I think that's then part of the motion, as I understand. Yes, Ms.
Chair, I would only ask that you, if you include that as part of your motion, is that have staff confirm that edge line striping does have physical space for the installation, Otherwise, we may be stuck with a motion that is not something that could be implemented.
So all right, the friendly amendment would be that staff investigate the feasibility of installing edge line striping, and if it can be done, would be done.
Yes.
And that ought not to delay. I don't know the timing of when you do all of this, but I mean, if it's, I mean, the first thing ought to be the signs and the 25-mile markings of pavement, I would think. So do we have a motion that we understand, or should I try to restate it? The motion is that we do the signs, the pavement, that staff investigate the feasibility of edge line striping and implement it if it makes sense, and that they work with the police department to put in the temporary trailer feedback signs.
Yes. So just to clarify, we wouldn't be outright installing this following the commission meeting. We would present to the city council for their approval. In order of installation, that easiest install, it would be the request for the speed trailer for PD. That would be easy for us to do because all we would request is for PD to schedule as part of that. The sign and the payment marking installation, we would include that as part of our packet, as part of our administrative report for the city council for their authorization, including the edge line. I think that, so what we would end up doing though is because edge lines can be a little bit more controversial than the installation of payment markings and speed limit signs. And so we would run, I guess, a separate meeting, if you will, with either Councilman Horvath or the residents. I may send a mailer out to the residents and say, hey, this is recommended by the Public Works Commission to be forwarded to the city council, and then gather their feedback prior to moving to the city council. And so I'm just kind of giving a rundown of the next steps that we would take prior to the city council meeting. So I hope that the commission can make a motion based on that clarification of how that would move forward.
Commissioner Bajaj.
Yeah, I would agree with that because you know, the community, they could have mixed feelings about the edge line. So I think that's a really appropriate path, is what Mr. Kim stated.
And I tend to agree with that. Well, I kind of held off on it initially, although I know we had broached that a little bit in the conversation prior to the motion. But I think as we worded it as such that it can be a component, if you will, that will not hold up the initial signs and the speed limit pavement markings. I think because we've kind of clarified that in the motion, that gives staff clear direction and it doesn't hold up one or the other. So I think we're good.
Any further comments or discussion?
Yeah, Chairperson, just one more thing. We haven't asked if there's any public comment, either online or via e-comment.
Well, I will make that request now. Is there any public comment? Either email or online, or I guess not.
No, I've not seen any e-comments or any email correspondence.
That being the case, I guess I will call for the vote on the motion. Gene, can you do the roll call, please?
Yeah, so just to clarify, it's staff recommendations in regards to the speed limit sign and the pavement markings. And then it's to request PD to include this location as part of their speed trailer program. And then to determine, to gather information, the feasibility of the edge line striping from the residents prior to moving to the city council. Right?
That is what I understand it to be.
All right. Commissioner Funabashi?
Yes.
Commissioner Arata?
Aye.
Commissioner Glass?
Yes.
Commissioner Bajaj?
Yes.
We have Vice Chair Min
Yes.
and Chair Simpson.
Yes. So that passes. And I guess we're now moving to J4, which would be an update, I gather, on the various approved projects and their status. Gene, I suspect you've got. Yes, there it is.
Yes. So as we try to do every quarter, we have our project status quarterly updates. The main focus of this quarterly update is to provide the commission with project status or status of city council approvals or responses, if you will, compared to the commission's recommendations forwarded to the city council. All right, so generally, this list, and I'm going to try to kind of go over kind of how this works, is we have a running list. These are all the projects that were kind of previously recommended by the Public Works Commission to be forwarded to the City Council. I believe the table is also provided as an attachment as part of our administrative report. So I'm just going to briefly go over and provide a status update to the commissioners in regards to some of the projects that were recently approved, authorized, or forwarded by the commission for the council's consideration. So Barrel Street Corridor traffic calming enhancements. If you recall, this was brought forward to the commission to assess the feasibility of always stop intersections along the Barrel Street Corridor between PCH and Catalina. The Public Works Commission recommendation was to approve staff's recommendation to move forward with the always stops and then install enhanced pedestrian crosswalks, continental crosswalks, if you will. That recommendation was forwarded to the City Council. Of course, prior to that, staff conducted a assisted Councilmember Lowenstein at his council district meeting in regards to the installation of the always stops to kind of take a look at get some feedback from the residents on their sentiment about the always stop controls. There was a lot of different responses, but ultimately, we sent out a questionnaire, got several different responses, different alternatives, but the vast majority of residents did coincide, and they wanted to move forward with the installation of the always stops, and so that was presented to the City Council. And of course, City Council concurred and recommended, approved, if you will, the installation of the always stops along there, with the exception that along Barrel Street, they would be LED flashing stop signs, while the minor roadways of Broadway, Francisca, and can't remember which one was in the middle, was just standard stop signs. And they're already stop controlled, but when we're out in the field and we take a look and realize that some of the stop signs may have lower decreased visibility because they're older or whatnot, we'd replace them to newer stop signs. Now, the current status of this project is we're looking to see if we can actually install the always stop controls along the corridor sometime before the end of this week. And so that's kind of the current schedule as it stands. I need to hear back from our Public Works team on the feasibility of scheduling that, but tentatively it's scheduled to go in prior to the week being out. And so that's kind of where we're at with that project. Second project we have right here is 182nd Street traffic calming. If you recall, staff took a look at some speeds and data in regards to 182nd Street between Inglewood and the railroad tracks over in District 3. Staff's recommendation was to install 25-mile-per-hour speed limit signs, radar feedback signs, edge line striping, the segment of roadway between Inglewood and the railroad tracks. This was approved by the City Council, and currently at this point in time, we're looking to find a way to install this project, hopefully as part of some current ongoing projects that we have, especially for the striping element, to see if our Public Works folks can go out there and do it, or if we can see the feasibility of getting somebody on board to complete the task. But it's basically right at the cusp of getting installed. Next project we have here is the Alta Vista Park access traffic calming. If you recall, this project is for the Alta Vista Park access roadway, where there were some speed related considerations, especially at the access roadway between the actual park driveway on the north side and then the roadway of, I believe, Serpentine, where heavy pedestrians, it's adjacent to a school. And so staff took a look at this area and the recommendations where the installation of speed cushion, installation of a speed table, and then to conduct and update the engineering and traffic survey to see if we can consider the reduction of the speed limit to 15 miles per hour as the location is adjacent to a park. Similar to the previous project, the City Council approved staff's recommendation. So this project is in it's in a bit of limbo because the Alta Vista pump station project is upcoming. And so, we certainly wouldn't try to construct a speed table and a speed cushion while that project is going on. And so we're at this point, I believe the schedule, we're going to try to see if we can get a designer on board so that we can get the design at least in place. And then the construction is anticipated to either go in possibly as part of the pump station project or following the pump station project. So that's where we're at with that project. Barrel Heights Elementary parking sign modifications. This project, pretty straightforward. There was a bunch of confusing signs that were adjacent to Barrel Heights Elementary School. And so staff took a look at some of the signs, modified it for clarification. And since they were just signs that need to be updated, this is currently in staff's task list for us to implement by coordinating with our public works folks for implementation. Redondo at Monterey always stop. If you recall, this was a project to install always stop controls at the intersection of Redondo at Monterey. This is a joint jurisdiction location with the City of Redondo Beach and City of Hermosa Beach. This project, the recommendation that the commission had for the council's consideration was, of course, install the always stop, and the associated appurtenances is the crosswalks, limit line, new signage, remove signage, and things of that nature. So this was approved by the city council, and so staff is currently in the process of coordinating with the City of Hermosa Beach to move forward with the installation. It's generally kind of in a nutshell is kind of the huge chunk of projects that we've kind of done or kind of brought to the Public Works Commission for your consideration this year. One project that's not on here, and it's kind of just as an update for a staff referral that came from the City Council in regards to looking at the installation of always stop controls. So in District 4, in the area bounded by Aviation, Grant, Inglewood, and Artesia, the vast majority of those intersections in that location are always stop controlled. However, there are 6 intersections that are only 1 or 2-way stop controlled. And so at a previous city council meeting, I believe it was in August, there was a staff referral and a request made to staff to look at the consideration of installing and upgrading those non-always stop controlled intersections to always stop controlled intersections. So this process was a little bit different than how we've normally done it. How we've normally done it is when a stop request comes in, there's a petition that goes out and residents either say yay or nay on whether they want or do not want the installation of an always stop. Once we get a minimum of 2/3 concurrence from the residents, then we move forward with the always stop warrant process. And that's kind of what the commission has seen previously when we bring forth intersections that are being updated to an always stop. What happened this time around, and this is just kind of for your information as well, is that the CVC doesn't necessarily, excuse me, the CVC, when it comes to the installation of an always stop, basically allows a local jurisdiction the authority on how they want to proceed with the installation of an always stop. And so, excuse me. So while we've been following the petition process, the city council does have the ability to exercise the authority to just designate an always stop at intersections. And so what the city council kind of did is basically designated staff to go reach out to residents adjacent to those 6 non-always stop intersections and basically get their feedback on whether they want an always stop or not. And so staff conducted, we sent mailers out and coordinated that with council member of District 4, council member Obaji, who basically sent out notification or letters, if you will, and email blasts to his constituents to get their feedback, to reach out to me in regards to the installation of always stops. Response we got back was pretty overwhelming. A lot of the residents wanted always stops at those 6 non-always stop intersections. And so, we presented our findings to the city council, and the city council basically approved the installation of always stops at those locations. And so it's kind of it's a project that was, since it was a direct staff referral from city council, and we were directed by city council to bring that back to the city council instead of going and presenting that to the Public Works Commission. You may not have been privy to kind of how that project went through or what the process for that project was, but that's one of the more recent ones that recently got approved by the city council for installation. So that kind of concludes my presentation. Let's see.
Thank you very much, Gene. Any comments or questions from any of the commissioners? Well, seeing none, I think we probably need to take have a motion to receive and file the report, don't we?
Chairperson Simpson, as with the other case, we should ask if there's anyone from the public that's providing any input.
Yeah, I'll ask that. It's difficult for me to remember when I can't see them. So that's another reason I hope that we're meeting in person again soon. Is there any public comment on this? Or no?
No, I haven't received any correspondence or any e-comments in regards to this item.
Thank you very much. And that being the case, then I think a motion to receive and file would be in order if someone cared to make that motion.
I'll make the motion that we receive and file the report as presented.
I'll second it.
Very good. Although we'll do a roll call vote, I guess, please.
Yes. Commissioner Funabashi.
Yes.
Commissioner Arata.
Aye.
Commissioner Glass.
Yes.
Commissioner Bajaj.
Yes.
Vice Chairman.
Yes.
And Chair Simpson.
Yes. So I guess that takes us to agenda item K, which would be member items and referrals to staff. So has anyone got either of those things? Yes, Commissioner Glass.
As usual, I would hate to build to not follow in my tradition. Kudos to the Public Works Group for managing the paving of the streets, north-south streets in North Redondo. There I'm talking Blossom, Green, Vale, and Ringe. Pavement looks really good, feels good when you drive on it, and the painted markings look good. Only concern that I have is that at the cross streets, a number of the cross streets, the new pavement has obscured the street markings on those streets at that part of the intersection. So there are some intersections along the 4 streets I mentioned where the old painting needs to be renewed because it was covered by asphalt.
Yes.
Okay. Second thing is, and this will be the last thing, I've noticed, as I mentioned in the past, that there are a number of e-bikes around these days. And I've seen a number of them ignoring traffic signs and going through stop signs and through intersections without looking to see whether there was oncoming traffic at 90 degrees. I think that somewhere in the future, the city is going to have to address whether e-bikes are vehicles or not and what rules they have to follow and get that out to the public. That's it.
Commissioner Min.
Yeah, last few meetings, I've just kind of pointed out the fact that the Public Works Commission and Public Works has, it involves a lot more than just traffic related items. And in particular, I've been really hoping for a presentation about our stormwater related activities in the city, especially the one that you've mentioned, Andy, about partnerships with Florence and other cities, South Bay cities, and stormwater capture and stormwater management. I think it's becoming especially important now as we go into a major drought and we're looking at water restrictions for, residents and city, use. And so I really just kind of want to put a bit of a sense of urgency on that somehow. I know I think there was a consultant I think you had mentioned that was working with you, and it'd be really nice if we can get a presentation and put some comments in. I understand that, perhaps there's a process for council consideration on how that plan is pulled out, but I think this can be a very good opportunity for the, as commissioners to provide some comments on what we think might be good for the city to consider in the future planning efforts in stormwater and other water related type stuff. Of course, if there's other, I've really enjoyed the presentations about some of our parks here and there. And I remember one about, the solid waste pickup and the, single stream versus dual stream. Which actually I find myself wondering why I'm putting up two different trash cans now, different color, even though they're all being picked up by the same truck, right? So there's like certain things that maybe we should discuss beyond just traffic. Although I do appreciate the traffic stuff. No offense, Gene, or anything, but there is so much more to public works than just traffic. Even though I know it's a big deal for all cities in Southern California, especially. But so I just encourage kind of more varied agenda items, I guess, in the future, especially if there's a need for engagement of any kind. I think this would be a great place to provide that. That's it. Thank you.
Commissioner Funabashi.
Thank you, Chair Simpson. Commissioner Min, and today's weather actually just kind of prompted me to give some thought to a request of our Public Works Department to see how our stormwater is actually managing on some of our busy streets and intersections. I think today might have been a decent test of how it's performing. I guess what I'm asking, if there are some areas in the city that are prone to flooding and things that we might discuss as a commission to improve upon. So I just kind of put that out there for maybe some future topic of discussion, with saying in closing that obviously, as was referenced earlier today, that Big Barrel Street improvement project, I know really did improve upon that street time. And I'm just obviously curious about how the rest of our streets in the city are performing and how we might improve that in the future. So that's all I have for this evening.
Commissioner Arata, any referrals to staff?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Commissioner Bajaj?
No, thank you.
I have three items, if I may. Number one, I've had recently the occasion to use the app when you need to point out something in the city that needs fixing that usually goes to Public Works. I just want to commend staff for being so responsive and fixing the problems that I pointed out. It was really very good to see, and the staff that came and fixed the bent stop sign and everything that had been hit by somebody and knocked half over. I think they were there the next day. It was and very efficient and very effective. The second thing, I keep being of the opinion that we need to examine very closely the traffic lights at on Artesia at Green and at Ringe. Ringe is particularly a problem. And those are, I think the technical term is you have a protective left turn and a protected permissive. And the problem is that people, when it's in the permissive mode, they make the left, and particularly at Ringe, making the left, you can't really see traffic very well because if there's people in the other traffic lane, you can't effectively see oncoming traffic. And the result is that a number of crashes there. I don't know how many, but quite a number. And there have been some same situation at, if you're going westbound on Artesia and making a left into Green, that's aggravated by the situation that if you make the left, you have to go up a slight hill And so cars sometimes misestimate how long it'll take them to get across. There was one spectacular crash there where a Volkswagen ended up on the library steps a couple years ago. And what I would like the staff to look into is the possibility of making those left turns simply protected left turns only and not permissive, or at least most of the time. I mean, maybe the lights at night could be allowed because there's not much traffic, but I mean, I don't, I mean, if you go down to Artesia and Aviation, those are all protected. Yes, Ted.
Chairperson Simpson, I just wanted you to know that there was direction given by staff or by the city council to staff already, and they've given us some money in the CIP to make improvements to those left turn pockets. So those are in motion for the
Commissioner Abaji, I mean, Councilman Abaji is behind that.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, because I've been talking to him a little bit, and I'm just glad to hear that something's being done, because those have both been problems. And then a final thing, the Ford Avenue traffic calming project included edge striping and various reconfigurations and some all-way stops, and I think it's been quite effective. And ultimately, there were it was to include radar feedback signs, speed signs. Those have just recently been installed. And I talked to somebody in Public Works about this. The one closest to Artesia, if you are southbound, that works very well. If you're going northbound, there's one installed in a little parquet right around Ormond. And it hardly ever gives any feedback. And I think the reason for that is because cars come off the speed hump and are going too slow to get the sign to give them a meaningful feedback. So I'm wondering whether that sign is appropriately placed, whether it should be farther up. I mean, I walk along that place with my dog quite frequently, and I watch cars go by, and it just does not seem to give any registration of anything happening. And when I pointed that out, and I forgot who I talked to, I'm sorry to say, he said it was functioning, but it might be a factor of just the speeds are quite slow there and it's not registering. Is that possible?
Yeah, that's a possibility, especially if it is in close proximity to the speed cushion. But also, I guess to remind the commission, that Ford Avenue corridor is on a rotational program for the radar feedback signs. And so it's not going to be placed there the entire time, right? So as we go through the months and whatnot, eventually it'll be moved to a mid-block location somewhere else.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it's on a rotational program. It just happens to be one of the location out of, I think it was 3 possible total as part of the rotation program that the radar feedback sign is there. So, and that's great because it's basically saying that the speed cushion's working and speeds are not increased along that segment. But of course, the next rotation, we may bring basically the northbound one or the southbound one farther south, the northbound one farther north. And then, they'll continue to be effective, hopefully.
Well, the south one is working very effectively, and you see cars doing exactly what it should do. You look over and they're going over the speed, and they see it and they slow down. It's really working effectively. Thank you very much. Commissioner Bajaj.
Yeah, thank you. I drive that one pretty frequently as well, and I haven't seen the northbound speed feedback sign turn on yet. So I assume that, because I know it's new, I assume that maybe it hasn't been activated yet, or maybe there was some delay in getting it functioning, or it's malfunctioning. Is there a minimum volume or minimum speed that has to be that you have to be traveling at before you're detected on those?
I believe so. And it might be programmable, so maybe it's something that we can reprogram. But it's the radar feedback sign is intended to have the vehicle slow down when they increase over when they're traveling greater than a certain speed, right? And so if the speed limit is 25 and the vehicle is going 20, it wouldn't necessarily flash a 20 mile per hour because you're going less than the speed limit, right? I think it triggers.
I think is what's happening there, and that because again, I apologize. The person I
Yeah.
talked with was very responsive. I first got a hold of him through the app and we had phone conversations and he went back and assured me that it was working, but thought that it might be the speed issues.
Yeah. I'll speed through there tomorrow and I'll report back. Just
That won't be necessary, I don't think.
just kidding.
Or if you decide to do it, we'll keep the police away. Any other referrals to staff? That being the case, I see none. I suppose we should entertain a motion to adjourn. And
I make
guess
that
we-
motion.
Is there a second?
Second,
And the second was by who? I'm sorry, I didn't.
by myself.
Commissioner, Vice Commissioner, Vice Chairman. Min. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Well, it looks as though we are adjourned.
Are we having, Mr. Kim or Mr. Saman, are we having a meeting, in November?
So what we've typically done is because our meeting schedule falls on Thanksgiving, I kind of include a placeholder for the discussion as part of the agenda packet. It's just kind of what we likely will end up doing is canceling that November meeting and then having a special meeting maybe the first week of December or something like that, as we've done previously.
Okay,
Okay.
got it. All right, thank you.
Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you all very much.